Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing and PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks, the big interview. Today I'm joined by Simon Ford, the CEO of Allstones Group. Welcome, Simon. Welcome to Punchline Talks. Great to see you again.
Morning, Mark. You all good?
Yeah, very well. Thank you very much. Let's kick
Lovely.
off straight away. Let's give us the context of where we are with Allstones. People might know about Allstones, but they might know about your part of Speedy Skips as well. Can you give us a breakdown about the company, please?
Yeah, so we come from a quarrying background, aggregates, moved into waste management in the late 90s. I've built up a waste recycling and management business alongside the aggregates and building materials. Do a lot of property development as well, buying of land and getting of planning permissions. We employ around 126 people. Turnover in the 20s. I'm not going to give you exact numbers.
Yes, okay.
So it's fairly sizable, and it's growing all the time, which is good. We're looking at a lot of different avenues.
So how long has the company been started? Was it started by your family and then you?
Yeah, it was started by my stepfather, Robert Street, in 1983, November 1983, and we operated out of a small yard, a third of an acre, in Denmark Road. And it was predominantly aggregate sales, bagged or loose aggregates and materials.
How old when you started there then, Simon?
I finished university, and I've worked all the way through ever since it was, every holiday or when you finish school or whatever it may be. So when I finished uni, I went traveling, and then when I came back, I was thrown into the business, as it were. So it's all that I've known, really, to a certain extent.
So what happened then? So your stepfather grew the business, started the business, and then
and he, he was an extremely hard worker. He was like a sergeant major, really. Taught me how to graft, definitely. And we needed to move on and find another yard to physically expand and grow. So I bought the yard where we are now in Myers Road, the first part of it, which was 5 acres. I actually bid against my elder brother to buy it. So that was an interesting one. And one of the things that, I've learned through my business life, and what has created wealth or value, if you like, is planning permissions. So we had 2 public inquiries relating to this site, one for waste and one for aggregates, because I could see that waste transfer stations and recycling was the future back in the late 90s, if you like. So I got planning for a waste transfer station and for the aggregates against the wishes of the city council, and they ended up paying us large sums of money for that privilege, if you like. And we've sort of gone on from there, and planning permissions have been part and parcel of my business life. You can sort of measure out and see a timeline, as to certain planning permissions and how they affect or grow the business at that point in time.
What's the secret of getting the planning permission? Just having a good solicitor? Is it understanding
a good team, a good team of consultants and good people, and a realistic approach to it. You've got to compromise in certain areas. And most of the time, it's sad to say, you've actually got to fight, because a lot of these officers or individuals within a government organization like a council, they don't live in the real world, I'm afraid, and you end up in appeal or something like that because they're not using their own money, are they? Whereas I am. And I'm quite prepared to take them on and fight them, and I'll employ better people than they are, in order to get it. So sometimes you've got to be determined, and you've just got to say, no, I'm not putting up with that. I'll take you on. Thank you very much. And that's my sort of opinion now, because the staff changes at these organizations all the time. And to a certain extent, COVID has given them the excuse not to come out, not to do anything, and that's why you're seeing delays in planning permissions and going all the way along.
You're not the first person that said that, and that's a conversation for another day. Can we
Yeah.
just backtrack? So when you found the site that you're at now, which is opposite the railway station,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was old derelict land, wasn't it? It's part of the Magnificent Seven regeneration of Gloucester, that land around it in the back where Morrison's is. You're opposite Morrison's now.
Yeah.
That must have been just a wasteland when you got there.
Part of it was the second half that I bought off British Rail Property Board. The main transfer station was a fertilizer depot for Camira Ince. This was the old original steam engine place with a turntable and everything. So it's got a lot of history to the site, and it's been industrial for over 100 years. So there was work that we needed to do, to facilitate the waste transfer and the aggregates, and to move up here. And then we bought another 9 acres attached to it, of which we had some tenants on different bits. And we've gradually sort of taken that over and expanded and moved into different areas, such as washing waste aggregates to produce secondary aggregates, recycled aggregates. We're crushing and producing concrete as well for these big Lego blocks that we make from entirely recycled materials.
So let's split the two businesses up if that's okay. So the aggregate side of the business, the skip side of the business. So you run a number of quarries as well, don't you? So what's the actual process itself? So the stone comes in from the quarries or from building sites from your waste. How does that all get separated? And because I've been to your place and you've got all these little panels that you can buy, lots of different like pebbles and grey stone and white stone and grey and brown stone. That's how I look at it all. I know they got names, mate, but I'm not. Grey stone, white stone. So how does it all work?
Well, we obviously have got our own quarries and our own materials that come in from them, but we buy an awful lot from other quarries and other individuals, such as Tarmac, Cemex, Hanson, and stuff like that, from all over the country and from Portugal and Spain as well, certain marbles and things like that for decorative use, for landscaping. And we've got an area on this site where we've got about 48 different bays. So they segregate each material and tip them off in there so that we can therefore load them up for landscapers or Joe Public who come in quite a lot, different flints or granites or sandstones. We've got quite a large variety of that. And then there's fast moving aggregates like building sands, plastering sands, type 1, concrete and gravel, flooring sand for patios and stuff like that. Incidentally, we've been getting our flooring sand from Cornwall recently because we can't get any locally. It's with the supply chain issues, it's been interesting times. But no, we store a lot of, there's probably about 80 different types of aggregate of one sort or another here. And then you've got all the relative, bag products and cement, and groundwork materials and stuff like that. And we're sort of moving a bit more into that builder's merchant sort of area, if you like. And on the waste side of it, we've got a processing plant from Germany where we take all the soils and hardcores out, if you just take that material, and then we crush it and wash it in order to take all the sand and all the stone, and we grade those stones as well. And we also manufacture a topsoil from waste that we get in. So we get green waste in, we compost that, and then we mix the compost, the finished product, with a sand from one of our quarries to make a BS standard topsoil as well. So it's a closed loop economy, if you like. So everything that we look at and try and do, we're trying to be as sustainable as possible, because we're a waste recycling business. We've even bought an electric car now for the reps, and the idea is to be fully electric within 5 years if we can, on the trucks as well as other plant and machinery. So
if you can then go into the skip side of the business, because a lot of people see your Speedy Skips around the place. Now I know that you've got around 5,000. Most people think you might have 20 or 30 perhaps, but 5,000 skips, that's a lot of skips buzzing around the place. Can you tell us a bit about that business as well?
Well, I can tell you that how it all started, which is an interesting one. When we were at Denmark Road in that small site, we had a customer who had a green Mercedes 7.5-ton truck, and he had Speedy Skips, and he had about 13 small mini skips. And he came in one day and he was a bit miffed about something. And we used to load him up with aggregate, and then he would go and give that to a customer. And I said, what's wrong? Anyway, he said, I've had enough of this. And I said, well, do you want to sell it? And he said, yes. I said, well, how much do you want for it? He said, 5 grand. I said, okay. So I literally bought Speedy Skips there and then, way back in the late 80s. And we started with that green skip lorry and 13 little skips. And then they seem to have, they've grown and grown and grown. And now we've got over 5,000 skips and 30 odd skip racks and all the rest of it. I'm one of those individuals that doesn't necessarily take a lot of money out of a business. I've always been one that plows it back in. Any profits that we make, we reinvest in the people and in our plant and our equipment, and we try and keep all our lorries, right up to date. So not many of our trucks are over 3 years old. And that goes for the same for all the machinery that we've got here as well. So it's been a really interesting journey, and that is changing all the time. We're constantly investing in new methods of recycling certain waste streams. If you took plastic, for instance, we're looking at methods of granulating that, and we're talking to recyclers in Turkey at the moment about construction film, and we've sent a lot of baled plastic over there, and they've sent us a lot of black bin liners back from our waste, and we've been distributing them to some of our customers, so the whole thing is a loop. But it's a really interesting journey, and it is changing. There's new technology that's coming on board all the time, and you've got to be right on the ball and know what's happening and try and lead rather than follow. It's
so how does it work with a skip then? So I've had a number of your skips over the years. So yeah. Stick it out here, your chaps put up, I put all my stuff in, and it is a right collection as everybody else is of anything that we could possibly get rid of from the house. It's not all the garden waste, it's everything goes into that skip. The odd mattress or the odd mattress appears. Someone stole a second-hand lawnmower from your skip, my skip, outside my house once. Don't get me started on it, mate. But they actually took another lawnmower, the new lawnmower as well, and they took the new one. Anyway, so my skip gets then picked up. What actually happens to the process? It arrives at your depot. How does it get separated?
Well, we weigh the waste to start off with, and then we tip it off in our sort of front area where we do a pre-sort, which we take out materials that need to be further processed that are going to damage the plant if it went through. So great big lumps of concrete or fence posts or things like that. And then we load the hopper, and which takes the waste through the whole plant process. So it goes over a screen, which takes out all the fines. And it also sorts out the aluminium, the copper, the sort of precious metals. We've got wind blowers, which take the paper and the cardboard off, to another processing element. We've got eddy current separators, and then a big picking station. So we've got chaps in there and ladies who are picking certain waste streams. So some will be picking plastic, UPVC, wood, paper, cardboard, hardcore, green waste, and we segregate everything back to its original source, because then we can further process it for 100% recycling. The residue that's left at the end of it is around about 2%, so we're recycling 98%. The 2% goes to waste to energy, so in other words it's zero to landfill across the board with the whole business. And as I said, we've moved to a ticketless business now. So all the lorry drivers, everything is all ticketless, and it's all done over tablets, on the internet. And we do waste management reports for our clients so that they know how much wood they've thrown out over a month or whatever from what particular site. It's bespoke to them. Not many companies do this, but because it's very laborious, and obviously gathering all the data is quite difficult. But it means that they can manage their waste a lot better and not throw as much out, and they can see, exactly what their site managers are doing, on a daily, weekly basis, because they've got the transparency of photographs, and weighing facilities and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so you're talking there about a construction site where people, you've got, construction site, and they're putting all their waste over to you, knocking down a building, and you take all the stuff away and break it down.
Yeah, so we deal with a large spectrum. I mean, obviously, a lot of work is from housing sites, development sites, large construction businesses. We deal across the whole spectrum, really, from members of the public right the way through to PLC, large investment companies and development companies. And we're looking at more commercial industrial waste and contracted waste as well. We're getting a lot of inquiries from other waste businesses that want to use our facilities because we're zero to landfill. They want to piggyback on the back of that to show their customers, that they're doing their bit for the environment, and moving everything forward as opposed to landfilling it.
Obviously, we've all been through this really traumatic time with COVID. How does that affect your business? You and I touched on it before, where, with everyone doing DIY at home, everyone suddenly out in their garden, you must have seen a massive uptick in business. And how did you cope with that? And, did you have to furlough any staff? What was the situation there at Allstones?
Initially, we furloughed about 50% of the staff because we didn't know how it was going to affect us initially, and then we did find out very quickly how it was going to affect us, because we had 1,000 calls a day from everybody. I want to skip, I want sand, I want this, I want that. It's been a relentless journey, and it's been very tiring, and it's very difficult sometimes to be positive and to stay positive and to keep grinding away. I mean, the business has doubled, in size really during this period, and we've been very, very lucky, touch wood, with that. It has been very difficult to keep up with those demands, and we have had supply chain issues as everybody else had. And what we found is that, people, their attitude towards, goods and services, it never ceases to amaze me. I call it the sort of Domino's pizza world, or the Amazon world, in which they relentlessly demand and expect everything within half an hour, and because you order a pizza and there's a clock, saying when it's going to be delivered and all this stuff. And for some reason, they expect the same to happen with an Arctic load of sand and gravel or something else. Things are changing on that service level thing, because I've always over infrastructured the business. So we got more lorries, more skips, more people than we actually need, so that they can have that level of service within half an hour or whatever. And that has been tested to the limit and more, with that. We quite simply haven't had enough, for the demand that we've received here. And we have ordered more lorries, more skips, more everything else to try and cope with it. The problem being that, I've got 11 new trucks that we ordered in January this year. They won't be arriving until at least March next year. So it's very difficult to program, what business are we going to have in March next year? What volumes and everything else. It is a guessing game, unfortunately. But, you've got to have a go, haven't you?
That's
You
right.
got to go for it.
You can never say still. I mean, the other thing, surely the customers themselves have got more challenging, shall we say, or more, you talk about they want it now, but also it's their attitude and the way they ask for now. Have you seen that a lot as well, a change?
I'm quite famous downstairs. They won't let me answer the phones now, because I tend to get a bit angry every now and then when I've got a certain customer who's irate and demanding and all that sort of stuff. I tend to tell him how it is. So there was one occasion where I did suggest to a gentleman that the skip that he was requesting to be picked up at 6:30 in the morning could be firmly bedded somewhere else upon his anatomy. So so they promptly got me out of the sales office and put me elsewhere. But yeah, it is frustrating sometimes. Look, we got some great customers and we got some great people working for us, and it's all really good, positive sort of problems, if you like. It's just been very tiring, and we've seen some cracks in the business, with people's mental health and all sorts of things like that. And I've sort of trying to understand all of that, and we're training our HR person specifically on mental health so that they can deal with any members of our staff. We've got a lot of fringe benefits and we look after our people, as well as we do our customers as much as possible. And it's just frustrations, I think, with certain individuals who haven't been able to go out to the pub or to a restaurant or on holiday. That seems to be the biggest thing. They haven't been able to go on holiday. But I feel sorry for the younger sort of 18 to 30 generation, because, they haven't been able to mix, or they haven't been able to, say, get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or, do normal things like that. We've had a life, to a certain extent. I'm 54 now. So I've done all that, whereas they haven't, and they've missed out on a year or maybe two, of doing that. And we've seen it. We've got a graduate program here of employing, and we've seen some of them. They've done very, very well, and others of that age group, have struggled a bit with different things. But we're here to support them and, and help them out in whatever they need, And
what would you say, Simon, has been the biggest learning curve over the last 18 months? What do you think is the number one thing that you've learned from it? And is there anything that you'd do differently?
There was some people that I kept within our organization too long. And when we saw COVID come along, we saw them either fall on their sword or run away as fast as their little legs would carry them. And they were employed far too long within the business. It's the one motto thing that, that I sort of live by is change or die. And we have changed dramatically as a business. If you were to come here pre-COVID and now look at what's happening now, and it's still changing and evolving all the time. That's one of the things that, that's probably the biggest thing that I've got from it, that you've got to keep changing and you've got to adapt and you've got to create new methods of doing things or change, and embrace it. Don't be frightened of it, go for it, and
well, that leads me very nicely on, because you believe at the time is rushing past us already. And I always ask people, if you had a vinyl record, do you ever listen to records? You're that kind of age where you and I would have bought a first album and stuff like that, played record players. What's the latest or the last album that you bought?
I can tell you, it was bought for me, actually. My wife bought it for me, and that was Country Music Volume 68 or something like that. And I'm not into country music, but I am now, So, and there's one song on there which I do like. It's called Your Man, and Josh Turner, I think, is the singer. So yeah, I'm getting into that, and I'm quite, most of the time singing in my car on the way home or something like that,
I can imagine you in a nice Stetson and and a little, leather trousers with hay
Yeah.
bar behind you, mate. I can bar dance in the summer.
You get me turned on there, so you don't want to go that route.
Okay, we'll move on. Top 3 business tips, Simon. What would they be, please, sir?
Obviously, the change or die. That's primary, really. Always treat people as you want to be treated. Obviously, we have got certain individuals in this world that aren't the norm, and they don't need to be treated that way. But the majority of people treat them as you want to be treated. And the other one, the final one, really, which is an interesting one for you because you managed to publicize it in the opposite way, was always be humble. So, and you put in your punchline magazine, never be humble. So.
One typo 8 years ago, you never think of this.
So always be humble, and always remember your roots and where you came from, and where you are, and be happy with that. So
Simon Ford, always great to talk to you. Thanks ever so much for joining Punchline Talks.
Thank you, Mark.